Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and ranking members. I have submitted written testimony. I'll try to just touch on the highlights and expand on a point that was brought up a little earlier. First off, I want to thank you for raising the bill, as I thanked you 2 years ago for raising a similar bill and for reporting that bill out. And you got it pretty far through the process, aiming at the same goal as the bill before us today, before it died, I think, in the Finance Committee. The purpose of the bill is really to fulfill a mission that we started about 20 years ago. Legislation that I introduced then said it was going to be the state policy to protect the agricultural lands of Southbury Training School farm, and that the objective was to try to get agricultural activity to occur there. Unfortunately, the latter event has not really happened. There is a dairy farmer who, even before the legislation was passed, was grazing cattle, and there's a map indicating the extent, and it's substantial. It's several hundred acres of land that he grazes dairy cattle. Hundreds and hundreds of other acres of land are basically lying fallow and gradually turning back into forest and or brush. And the reasons for this seem to be partly because the state's leasing policies made it very difficult for anybody to come onto the land and make any kind of reasonable investments, because we only would grant short-term leases. So I'm happy to hear that we're talking about a 15-year lease, and I'm hoping that those might be available for renewal, because when someone puts a lot of money into developing a piece of land for agricultural activities, they need to have some time to recover their investments. That's been one of the problems. And also, I think, and I'm hoping that the department is changing its direction a little bit, but historically, for the last 20 years, the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Developmental Services have both seen this as not part of their core mission. And so I'm hoping that with this legislation, with the promptings coming from the easement holder, that they will be more fully motivated to bring about agricultural activity on this land. And there's also, of course, a concern that by having the easement in the hands of a third party, or a second party, I guess, that it won't be possible for the state, and we've all of us who are sitting here have seen this on the last night of session. Some bill comes out of the hopper, an amendment is attached to it, nobody really knows exactly what it does, and then you find out a couple of days later that you just transferred the University of Connecticut to the Soviet Union or something. I mean, you know, where these things come from we don't know, but they pass because it's part of a must-pass bill. And so that's always been the great fear, even after the legislation was passed some 20 years ago, was that something like that could happen, that some sort of unexpected, sudden, secret, and perhaps surreptitious activity could occur, even though we're all being broadcast on television. Not everybody knows exactly what everything in each of these bills is, and especially in the last few days of session, some weird things have happened. We've all had that experience. Attached to my testimony, there are a significant number of letters that come from various sources, regional planning authorities, conservation commissions, and so forth, all very supportive town officials, and we'll be hearing from some town officials after me as well. The one thing that was mentioned here that I want to amplify a little bit upon is the need for some sort of explicit waiver of the sovereign immunity of the state of Connecticut. That issue was raised. Chairman Meyer, you raised it. And it's something that has been a concern to a number of us, and I think that we can address that effectively. And I think it's necessary that we do so. There is a case, I will leave this with my testimony, and it's an unreported case, so you have to get the citation through the court system. But basically it involved an easement that the state had on a piece of land. Sort of the reverse of the situation here, but it was an easement the state had on a piece of land. It ran a water pipe through the land. The water pipe became defective. The people through whose land it was being run wanted the state to fix the pipe. The state refused, so they went to court. And they were told, you can't sue the state over this defective water pipe because you don't have an explicit waiver of the right of sovereign immunity that the state holds. And so, in order to have the easement holder be able to go to court to enforce the easement in the need, hopefully it's not needed, but if it ever were, there needs to be an explicit waiver of sovereign immunity. The courts have been pretty clear that it's very difficult to find an implied or common law basis or anything else. So even when there's an agreement, an easement between the state and the property holder, that doesn't somehow implicitly waive sovereign immunity. This case is clear on that point. And certainly when the state is the fee holder and the easement is what's being held by the private party, it's probably going to even be more difficult for a court to find its way to be able to get past sovereign immunity. So I hope that the committee will favorably vote for this bill and that we can move forward. This is very important to the town of Southbury, to the town of Roxbury, to the entire region, and to the state of Connecticut. I think the Commissioner of Agriculture did a very good job of explaining how really important this land is to western Connecticut. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Art. I think our good LCO, Brad Towson, Brad, you might be looking before we do the JFing where we could put in that waiver. Thank you. I gather you support, Representative, you support adding a waiver of sovereign.
Absolutely. It's part of my testimony that I will read it into the record if need be. I would recommend one addition to the draft that is before you, the addition of language that makes clear that the easement holder will be able to bring court action. We hope never necessary against the state to enforce the easement authorized by this legislation. I've attached proposed language that would accomplish this purpose, and it's 3 lines, and it's drawn from another statute where we waive sovereign immunity so that lawsuits could be brought.
Okay, good work on this again, and we'll get to the finish line this time.
Great, I hope so too.
Any questions? Senator Chapin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question about two sentences, and you probably don't have the bill in front of you, but it says any property leased, permitted, or licensed pursuant to this subsection shall be exempt from taxation by the municipality in which said property is located. It already is, isn't it?
Yes, that may be a form of redundancy. I was not the drafter of the bill as it sits right now. Clearly, the land is not subject to taxation. The fee will remain with the state. I don't know if perhaps somebody might put something, attach something to the land. That might become an issue, and maybe that's why it's there. If someone were to build some kind of structure, whether it's some prototype, maybe of irrigation device or something of that nature, there might be an issue about whether that can also be exempt from taxation. I'm not sure. That probably the exact language maybe came from the Attorney General's office. I'm not sure.
Well, the next sentence may clarify at least its intent, which talks about the assessed value being part of a calculation for pilot payment. I assume the towns now receive pilot payments for the property, don't
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
And it's several $100,000, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000.
So I guess I don't object to articulating that should continue.
Absolutely. I think the towns would be confused. I mean, obviously there would be more taxes levied because pilot only takes up about 20% of the cost, what taxes would probably generate on a piece of property. So the town theoretically could get more money, but I think that rather than muddy the waters as to who pays and what has to be charged and so forth, it's clearer just to leave it untaxed as it is right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks, Art.
Thank you very much.